Hi, I'm Tyler, and this is the Fox Valley Film Critics. In this episode of the show, we're going to be discussing the next on the lineup of the AFI's Top 100 American Films, Cabaret, as well as the newest comedy film by Olivia Wilde, Booksmart. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the show, brought to you by Groupthink Productions and FVTV. Joining us once again is our regular actress, Kat Evans.
Hello.
How's it going?
So good.
What you been up to since the last time you were on?
I am working on a live radio show called Starlight Radio Dreams. It's an original show every month in Chicago. And then I've also picked up a sci-fi literary series called Gateways, which happens at Otherworld Theater, which is the only sci-fi and fantasy theater for many, many miles. I'd like to say the Illinois, and I'd like to say the country, but I'm not sure.
I'm sure you could find one if you went out to, Ottawa. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. But yes, that's been keeping me fabulously busy and full of good content in the Chicago area.
Sure. So our first discussion film is Cabaret, and you seemed kind of enthusiastic about this.
I am. It's an amazing film. It holds the highest number of Oscars when not getting Best Picture. It was an incredible debut for Liza Minnelli. It was a directorial huge success for Bob Fosse, who directed as well as choreographed. And it's fascinating because it's a movie made after a musical. And I would say improved upon the musical, which as a theater person, I know that's a bold, scary statement to make, because that doesn't often happen. I couldn't say that about Rent. I couldn't say that about Les Mis. I couldn't say that about Phantom.
Ooh.
Movie not better than the show. And the shows, whether they're great or not, is also debatable. Never mind. Let's go back to Cabaret, which is an incredible film. Dirty. Frightening.
Risque.
And intentionally dirty. They were trying very hard to say the Weimar Republic was gross, but also seductive. Super seductive and ignoring the political situation that was falling down around it, and it does an incredible job of telling that story.
This is a movie about the consequences of libertinism.
Indeed, a point of looking the other way when politics is getting out of hand. But also, the musical came out in '66. Movie came out in '72. That's a short turnaround time for a musical to have a worldwide sensation, massive Broadway success, tours, etc., and then for a movie to get made that fast.
Yeah, usually when you got these big, huge Hollywood musicals, or not Hollywood musicals, Broadway musicals, it takes forever to get the actual film adaptation off the ground. Like a lot of recent ones haven't even gotten one. Like there's never been a Wicked or a Book of Mormon movie yet,
which is shocking, actually. Yeah. I'm a bit surprised about that.
Maybe it's just because those shows are so huge. I'm sure eventually they'll do a Hamilton movie, but
right.
Because at some point it becomes too huge not to do it.
Right. Well, and the Wicked book is a massive epic novel, not for children, but the movie, the musical was brought down for a 12-year-old level to be enjoyed. So I wondered if they did a movie, if Jeffrey Maguire or whatever the novelist's name is would want it to be darker, like what he intended for the novel.
I would imagine they're going to go full Les Mis on this. So
yeah. Well, Cabaret also was originally a short novel, which then was made into a play, which was then made into a musical, and eventually the movie. My academic friends would call that remediation, where we just media over and over and over and over again. And like I said, I think the movie does an incredible job of a much told story by that point. One of the major changes they made was taking all the songs that were typical in the emotional logic of a musical, where a character would just turn and sing to the audience, and got rid of those. And the only songs they kept were the ones that were in the cabaret, so that you could watch the film and plausibly follow it as a realistic story, because all the songs and dances are on a stage, in a nightclub, like they would be for normal humans.
Yeah, I remember in college they described that as diegetic sound, that meaning when you have a sound that's fits within the logic of the environment of the scene, as opposed to something that's non-diegetic, where you'd have music that's playing over the film like a soundtrack. So the fact that they kept everything kind of in the logic of the story is kind of a fascinating choice. It just kind of grounds everything.
Yeah. Did you enjoy the film?
Oh yeah, it's interesting. I had never seen either the stage version or the film prior to just the past week. I mean, I admittedly have a strained relationship with Broadway shows, given that I was raised in the theater and I've seen enough in basically every major one enough to be completely sick of them. So.
Well, and I'm a Chicagoan, so we all have a chip on our shoulders against Broadway anyway. We like small, gritty shows.
Oh man, it's like. I remember my favorite. I think the best stage play I ever saw was something called "Be a Good Little Widow," and it was just this like 2-man play that was just shown at a tiny off Broadway theater in Chicago.
That's how we like it.
I liked you in Prometheus Bound too. So.
Thank you. That's when I played a cow. Oh, the days where you play
last year.
Yes, where you play princesses turned into cows by gods. But yes. Another major change that was incredible about this film was that in the original several iterations, the main character, the man, is
played by Basil Exposition.
Right, played by Michael York, who also plays Basil Exposition.
I will only know him from Austin Powers.
Sure. But in the original, he is American and Sally is British. And for the movie, they flipped that. And I think it was a genius choice. Liza Minnelli is this incredible force of chaos and seduction and glamour, and his British uptightness makes perfect sense, at least to this American viewer. The fact that Sally, as a character of chaos and seduction, was the Brit, that must have maybe played more to 60s audiences who thought of like, oh, those wild British swingers. But now we tend to think of, or at least Americans tend to think of the British as more uptight, and it's watching Michael York's character sink into the sinful nature of the cabaret, and the way
American libertinism,
or German libertinism at the time, right? I mean, it is odd that it's a movie about Germany where the two main characters are neither German, neither one.
That sounds like something they would do in an American play in the 1960s. So
right. But they, in the movie and the musical, confront themes that a lot of people weren't ready to talk about yet: bisexuality, multiple sex partners, multiple living partners, all kinds of.
I don't know if it portrays it in a particularly flattering light at the time, but
no, but it just enough to make you curious. Right?
It might be like one of those things where it's like doing like Wolf of Wall Street logic, where it's kind of portraying it as like, oh look, it's fun to do it, and then you realize, and then the movie is ultimately not saying good things about it, because in the background you have all these scenes where you have characters being like, man, the Jews do sure control a lot of the banks, and you're just like, whoa!
Yeah, right. And while this movie tries to portray that really awful, creepy anti-Semitism, it doesn't necessarily it doesn't not reinforce it. The gorilla number is super awful, and like, let's never do it ever again. But it's also important to tell that story of how did anti-Semitism grow? Why did people look the other way? How did it get so out of hand? And the subplots in the movie where we have a Jewish person and a not Jewish person, although he may be hiding that, figuring out whether or not they can marry, is poignant. And in the musical, they have one of those too, which I think it's deeper in the musical, and both characters are older, and they get engaged, and then eventually she breaks it off, specifically because he's Jewish. And it's really, really sad and tragic. More tragic than, say, Sally and Brian. Does his name matter? We'll call him Basil. Sally and Basil.
I like this.
Who can't seem to make it work.
This works for me. I mean, I think it really builds up to that just really creepy final shot where they do the final musical number, and then they pan over the audience, and it's like mostly people in Nazi uniforms, and it's just kind of like, it's kind of, we're back up to where everyone, we know how the story ends at this point. So
right. And the Tomorrow Belongs to Me, which begins with this, lovely boy soprano singing in a meadow, and then as we pan back, we realize what he's singing for and what that rally is for, and it's sickening and terrifying, and especially when you think about all the children that got indoctrinated into it so young. Another amazing piece of music in the film is Sally's big solo, Maybe This Time I'll Win. Whereas in the musical, she sings that to the audience, right? It's a big I want, I hope number. I think it closes the first act. In the movie, there's Liza. Shot's pretty tight on her. She's singing her heart out. She's killing it. She's amazing. But at the very end of the song, we pull back and we realize she is singing to no one. The cabaret is empty. Maybe it's an audition. Maybe she's rehearsing. But she's just given us her heart and soul and is this incredible performer for nothing. And it's an incredibly well-played cinematic moment to say, well, what are we going to do with this moment in the musical where she sings to the audience? Like, well, here it is.
I'm kind of seeing why you would say this would be, the film version might be better than the stage one, because you can with film you can actually have moments like that where you can pan the camera slightly and just completely change the context of what this character is saying or who they're saying it to, and it adds to so much like deeper meaning to it. Whereas I imagine that musical number in the stage play, and it's just a burlesque show. It's just one character kind of singing their heart out, but when you add the extra layer to it, that it becomes something completely darker and more real. And especially when, as you said, they cut out all of the musical numbers where they
were not in the cabaret.
Yeah, so it just becomes this incredibly depressing show about like depressing people who are just kind of distract themselves in the final months of this of freedom in Germany. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this topic. We're going to join us for the next segment. We'll be discussing Booksmart. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome back. Now we get to talk about Olivia Wilde's directorial debut, Booksmart, which I know this came out early this summer, but I had not seen it until just a few weeks ago. But
it's a fantastic movie. It is the teen romp that I needed when I was 12 until 25 and got none of.
Oh.
Most of it. I mean, The Breakfast Club got me through middle school, but that is a problematic film. Looking back, it doesn't hold up in a lot of ways. And the genre of a teen movie, especially an end of high school, crazy celebration caper, right? There are a lot of movies in this genre, and I think Wilde as a director nailed it, the stars nailed it, the 4-person screenplay team nailed it. It's incredibly funny, but still hits most of the tropes people expect when they go to a big teen movie, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me a lot of Lady Bird in 8th grade, which came out the past 2 years. I guess it's becoming a thing now where we get one life-affirming teen romp film every year from someone who you didn't expect it from.
Yeah, Lady Bird is also incredible, and also has Beanie Feldstein in it.
Oh wow!
She plays the best friend.
Oh wow!
Very different character, much more
oh my gosh,
mousy, vulnerable. Beanie in this film, who knows? Since I don't know Beanie Feldstein, but I'm guessing this is the character she wants to play, or the person she is in real life.
Oh my gosh!
Where she can just dominate everything all the time and brilliantly waltz her way through school and crush everything in sight. Like, she's incredible.
I mean, I'll be honest, 8th grade is the one that appeals most to me because I was that incredibly shy, awkward person in 8th grade, so. 8th
grade is also an incredible film, especially in, oh gosh, how do I put this? It's so cringy.
Exactly, it captures a character who just can't communicate all that well. And
yes, and it was incredibly relatable, even though it has this massive realistic component of the internet, which was not around when I was in 8th grade.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, I'm old. But despite the fact that the character in 8th grade is always on her phone, always on YouTube, always Instagramming or Snapchatting or whatever it is she's doing, the film was still entirely relatable just because of the age. Like, yes, that is what 8th grade is like even now and even today, which don't know if that's comforting or sad. Well, because it's that awkward.
People suffer the same in every generation, I guess. So.
Maybe, right? So, but is that comforting or is that sad?
It means everyone deals with it.
Little of both.
So, yes. Well, let's not go too far off
Back
Booksmart.
to Booksmart.
Is this one specifically kind of connected with you more than in the others?
Because it was a funny teen romp that I could, in fact, identify with. I mean, it's from a female perspective, but the other swath of characters, despite the fact that we begin with a lot of high school stereotypes, by the end of the film, nearly every single one of them has had a character arc and has shown that they are a person and not just a type to be exploited in a party movie. My favorite standout in the film is the weird rich girl drug addict played by Billie Lourd,
Yeah.
who is Carrie Fisher's daughter.
Oh my gosh. That makes so much sense.
Right? I know. I think she's probably just channeling her mother through the entire film. She's like, oh yeah, my mom would be proud of me to do this now. Yeah, and she and her companion, who is not her boyfriend, but is also sort of a poor, misunderstood rich guy who tries way too hard, they get some delightful character arcs. The girl that Beanie judges for being a slut, they have a wonderful come to Jesus or, finally get to know each other moment where, we get to see her vulnerability and we get some sex positivity, which is like, why must you judge me for having sexual activity? You're only jealous, which is true. Beanie is only jealous of her because or at some point she looks like she may have the guy that Beanie wants. And she's like, oh, you're right. I don't judge anyone else for being sexual. We're mostly body positive in this film, but I'm only mad at you because you've got the guy I want. Oops. And so even we find these sort of left swinging, thinking they're very progressive young ladies still have something to learn, including the pronunciation of Malayla's name. Did you notice that?
I didn't catch that. I don't
So
know.
their biggest hero, right, is this incredible world icon who got shot in the head and is survived and is this incredible advocate for women's education.
Yeah, the girl who wrote I Am Malayla. So.
Yes, I am Malayla. But I think they say Malala when it's their code word for I now need your help and complete unfiltered support now. That's their and they say Malala. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's Malayla, but never mind.
Maybe that's some sort of weird hiccup, but that could be intentional. Who knows?
Yeah, right. To show again, these incredibly progressive, smart young girls still have a few things to learn.
And admittedly, I was told that this film was going to be like super bad when I first heard about it, and I was like, that's not my kind of movie. Like I saw the trailer for Good Boys recently, which I have no interest in seeing because it looks just like the raunchiest thing I've ever seen. I'm just like, this is kind of gross. I'm not kind of into that kind of ultra gross sex comedy. But so I was like, initially I wasn't going to see this, but then seeing it, I was like, oh, it's a really poignant character piece, and it's not super raunchy. There's like one or two scenes that that push a little, but it's not that way at all. It's actually quite touching.
The first 10 or 15 minutes of the film are a little tough because some of the teenagers are so mean to each other. I almost couldn't start because I was like, oh no, like many teen films where people are just horribly cruel. And I thought, oh no, is it gonna be like this the whole film? And it's not at all. The film is all about all of these young people coming to understand each other and affirm each other and go into the world to conquer it.
I think the moment that kind of turns the movie for me is the scene in the bathroom where everyone finds out that everyone is going to be going to like an Ivy League school.
Oh, right.
Because at that point everyone's like judging each other and they all look down on each other, and then you find out, oh wait, they're all like incredibly intelligent people that despite their flaws they're all basically on the same path in life, and just that kind of sets the entire plot in motion where the main characters are like, we've studied our entire lives, and everyone else has a life in addition to it.
Right. Turns out you could have fun and study. Which, it's not that these two haven't had fun, because the two best friends, they love each other so much. And just picking one other up for school is a party. Right? They can't stop themselves from having fun and complimenting each other on their outfits and just playing back and forth as a perfect comedic pair every moment they're together. And that is delightful to watch.
Well, they're introverts, essentially.
Especially Amy, the one played by Caitlin.
Yeah.
She is obviously, I'm not sure how well the film explains her arc, that she seems adventurous but actually doesn't like to take risks. And her best friend is always saying, let's get out there, let's do things. And Amy's always saying, no, let's not. And wait, am I getting this right? Amy and
I saw this 3 weeks
Molly.
ago.
That's right, yeah, Molly and Amy. Anyway.
The name, forgive me for getting the names, I saw this like 3 weeks ago. The names are like the thing I'm forgetting, and I forget them normally, so.
Right, we'll call them Basil.
That paid off.
That's Chicago long form.
Rule of 3. So.
Right. But yes, they both have incredible comedic talents, It's delightful watching them play off of each other. It's delightful getting to watch them have fun. You get the sense that everyone had a blast making this movie. And I wonder how many surprises they had on set. Again, when you have 4 people writing a screenplay or credited
That's the
with
touch
a
of death
screenplay,
usually.
usually that means it's gonna be a mess. But it turned out beautifully.
I mean, when you said 4 screenwriters, I didn't check the IMDb page prior to this. So I'm just like, wait, what? I mean, like, what?
And not that most screenplays don't have 4 people on it, but they just don't usually all get credited.
Well, yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm sure like Disney movies, there's like one screenwriter and then it gets put into like a council. So
Right.
you have to go through every page and make sure it's approved. But
Right.
but yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. The fact that it holds together is spectacular to me now that I realize that.
Also worth mentioning are the adult characters in the film. The
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, the principal who has to drive Uber to
Yeah.
make ends meet.
No.
And the teacher who is the coolest and their best friend, but she hints that, oh yes, I had this wild past. I'm glad you girls are so much more straight and narrow than me.
And she just desperately wants to go to hang out with high school party.
Well, yes, and like even checks to say, you're 20, right? Before she makes another big mistake.
I mean, that subplot was a little creepy, but I mean, obviously in context when they explained, like, oh, the guy's 20, so it was
he
still
just
really
didn't
creepy,
graduate.
though.
Yeah, and like, that's
That might be pushing it.
questionable. But also the pizza delivery man, who for the first
Oh my
part,
gosh.
I know, he brings us to this incredible reality check, right? Because these 2 girls seem brilliant and excited and smart, strong and smart, and then he, for one moment, gives them a complete reality check on how ridiculous they are. He's like, don't show me your password. Don't give me your personal information. Why are you doing this? This is so dangerous. You're young women. This is, he gives her
I
this
have a
little
gun in the
lecture.
car just for this reason.
Right. So he lectures them like a father. He kind of gives them more parental advice than any adult gives them in the film.
And I don't want to say what the payoff to that story
Right.
is, but the payoff,
Was
so good.
yeah, worth seeing the film and not
Just for that.
spoiling it for you, but see how the pizza delivery man pans out. But yeah, but just that
Pun.
scene. Aha!
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this segment. I wish we could go on, but join us for the final segment. We'll be getting this week's movie recommendation. Stay tuned. Hello, welcome to the final segment. We're going to be handing things over now for this week's movie recommendation.
I would like to talk about Willow.
All right?
Screenplay by George Lucas, directed by Ron Howard.
That's a heck of a pair.
I know. Like before George got too rich. But when he was still, to point, like, I just like creating beautiful stories. Ron, you're an amazing director. Make my vision come to life. And Ron made magic. Willow is an incredible film starring Val Kilmer and Warwick Davis. Warwick Davis met George Lucas on the set of Star Wars, where he played Wicket the Ewok at age, I don't even know, he was a teenager. And he was not that old when he played Willow, although he plays a character that's older because he's the father of 2 children. So you have this incredible, grounded hero, right? He's a farmer, married with kids, who has to take this baby to safety. And the effects of this movie, I would say, hold up. This is when we still had models and stop animation when we want to show transformation. Incredible, all the magic effects. I mean, of course, it's dated, it's 1989 or so. But I would say it holds up incredibly well. They had the Jim Henson Creature Shop in for a lot of their monsters. This is a perfect sword and sorcery film. And it has more female characters than most sword and sorcery films, especially from that time. We have the queen, we have the good wizard, Rizal, we have a fairy queen, we have the warrior princess, Sorsha, and we have the baby, who remarkably does incredible acting in this film. Huh. I don't know how many takes it took to get these reaction shots from the baby, or how many hair artists they had on her like perfect red ringlets, but the baby is amazing. So I highly recommend as a perfect sword and sorcery film, monsters, battles, people being turned into pigs. It's got everything you could possibly want. A tiny little romance subplot, just in case you need one. Mostly perfect epic adventure and good versus evil.
I'm kind of imagining something halfway between Labyrinth and Legend. But I've never actually seen Willow, but I'll have to know. Supposedly there's going to be like a Netflix revival of it at some point. Or...
I hear a sequel is coming.
Yeah, I mean, they've been hinting at that for a while. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned George Lucas. I mean, have you ever heard of Marcia Lucas, his wife?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, everyone always likes to say that George Lucas kind of started, you can kind of date when he started to suck as a director, because that was the date his wife stopped working on his films.
Oh.
She was, I think it was Film Crit Hulk who pointed this out, she was the editor, and before she worked with him, she worked on Taxi Driver. So,
which was in fact the movie we reviewed the last time I came on this show.
Full circle. So yeah, I mean, George Lucas loses the director of Taxi Driver, who actually had some ability to convince him that some of his ideas were bad, and he becomes the head of the studio, and suddenly he's now in control of everything, and no one around him tells him no anymore. Right. So that's when he starts sucking.
Maybe. But yes, Willow is a masterpiece, and it's funny. The brownies, like almost in any film where you have small people running around, they end up unbelievably annoying. The brownie routines, you could watch them at like Key and Peele sketches. They're so funny, and they pretend to be French, which luckily doesn't offend in a lot of ways that a lot of things over time, like they end up picking cultures that we shouldn't make fun of or choose as our comedy, but for whatever reason, the brownies are French.
Wow, there's worse people you could offend. Mm-hmm. That's all the time we have for this episode of the Fox Valley Film Critics. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to find past recordings of the show, you can do so on the Groupthink Productions YouTube page. You can follow me on Twitter at @antisocialcriti, that's critic without the C at the end of it. And you can find my written reviews at Geeks Under Grace and Legal Insurrection. I'm Tyler with the Fox Valley Film Critics. Have a wonderful day.